It begins with a smell. Not the smell you're thinking of. Not blood, or ozone, or the rot of a plague-choked world. It's the smell of incense. Thick, cloying, sacred. The kind they burn in the imperial cathedrals that now dot every world from Terra to the Ghoul Stars. It's a smell that clings to the back of your throat, a sweet, suffocating perfume meant to mask the scent of something else. Something older. It's the smell of the Imperium. Our Imperium. The one that was saved. You see the golden banners, don't you? You hear the hymns, the billion-strong choirs singing praises to the God Emperor, our undying master. You feel the comforting weight of orthodoxy, the certainty that this is how it was always meant to be. The great heresy was thwarted. The War Master Horus, in a moment of divine clarity, saw the error of his ways. On the blasted moon of Davin, he spared the Emperor. He knelt, instead of striking. He repented. And in doing so, he doomed us all. This is not that story. That story is the lie they feed you with your daily gruel. This is the truth. The one I keep locked behind my teeth, a sour taste that never fades. I was there. Not at Davin, no. I am not that old. But I was there for the aftermath. I am a remembrancer. Or, I was. My duty was not to paint glorious battle scenes or compose epic poems. My purpose was quieter, deeper. I was a chronicler of the sanctified. My task was to document the miracles. And that, my unseen friend, is where the true horror begins. Not with a roar, but with a whisper. Not with a blade, but with a blessing. My world was the Photep, once a vessel of the 15th Legion, now a floating cathedral in the service of what they call the reconciled will. It is a place where the esoteric geometries of the Thousand Suns merge with the brutalist iconography of the Imperial Creed. Corridors twist back on themselves, stained glass windows depicting the Emperor's mercy on Davin cast kaleidoscopic shadows that seem to watch you. And the air, always that smell. Incense and dust, the dust of ancient tomes and forgotten incantations. My days were a ritual in themselves. I would wake in my small, hexagonal cell, the soft, golden light of the simulated Terran morning glinting off the lectern that held my data slate. I would kneel, facing the small, polished brass icon of the Emperor on my wall. Not the Emperor you know from the history slates, the warrior in shining armor. This icon showed a different face. A weary, sorrowful face, his eyes downcast, a single tear of polished jet tracking down his cheek. The Emperor of Grief. The God who weeps for his children. I would recite the litany of the spared blade. The words are etched into my mind, even now. From the brink of parricide, you were spared, O War Master. From the abyss of treachery, you led us back, O Horus. For the mercy shown in the moment of wrath, we give thanks. For the loyalty that overcame corruption, we offer our souls. I said the words. Every day? For years. I said them until they lost all meaning, becoming just sounds, shapes of breath and tongue. But I never forgot what they truly commemorated. A moment that did not happen. A mercy that was never shown. You see, I have access to the forbidden archives. The ones sealed behind walls of sound and psychoreactive alloys. I've seen the other accounts. The whispers. The truth, as best as it can be grasped, is that on Davin, there was no grand moment of repentance. There was no kneeling. There was a struggle, a psychic cataclysm that scarred the warp itself. And when it was over, the Emperor was subdued. Not slain. Not defeated in combat. Contained. Horus did not spare the Emperor out of mercy. He spared him as a physician spares a rare and fascinating disease, to be studied, to be utilized. My superior was a man named Magister Kalen. He was of the Thousand Suns, his features eternally hidden behind an ornate, blue and gold helmet, carved into the serene face of a scholar. His voice was a soft, melodic hum, like the vibration of a crystal glass. He was the one who assigned me my miracles. Scribe Valerius, he would say, his helmeted head tilted in a way that was almost avian. The planet Kolth secondary reports a new phenomenon. The sun there, you recall, was poisoned during the unpleasantness. The sky is a perpetual, sickly ultraviolet. Yet, in the central plaza of the primary hive, a single shaft of golden light has appeared. It falls upon a statue of the War Master. It is causing transformations. He would hand me a data crystal. It was always cool to the touch. Document the testimonies. Record the changes. Be thorough. Be precise. But most of all, Scribe Valerius, be faithful. The first time he said that, I thought he meant faithful to the truth. I was so very, very young. My journey to Kolth Secondary was my first taste of the true rhythm of this saved Imperium. The ship I took was a pilgrim vessel, a vast, city-sized ark filled with the devout. They were not soldiers. They were men, women, and children, their faces gaunt with a fervor that bordered on starvation. They chanted day and night, not for victory, but for penance. They wept for the sin that Horus almost committed, a sin so vast that its mere shadow required 10,000 years of atonement. I remember a woman, her hands clasped so tightly her knuckles were white. She rocked back and forth, her voice a raw scrape. Forgive us our doubt, O War Master. Forgive us for ever believing you could fall. And the smell. Always the smell. Incense, yes, but underneath it, the faint, coppery tang of blood. The ship's Geller field wasn't powered by a standard reactor. I learned later, much later, that it was sustained by a choir of psychers, their life force slowly siphoned to keep the demons at bay. They called it the chorus of the atoned. Their whispers were the ambient hum of the ship. We sailed on a sea of their size. Kolth Secondary was a nightmare painted in gold. The hive was a towering, blackened spire under a violent, purple sky. And at its peak, just as Magister Kalen had said, was a shaft of light. It was wrong. It wasn't the warm, nourishing light of a star. It was a thick, liquid, heavy light. It fell like honey, congealing on the giant, marble statue of Horus Lupercal. The statue depicted him not as a warrior, but as a shepherd, one hand resting on the head of a stylized wolf, the other outstretched in a gesture of benediction. And the people, they were gathered in their thousands, their faces turned up to that false sun. Their eyes were wide, unblinking. And they were singing. A low, harmonious drone that vibrated in my teeth. The transformations were not what I expected. I thought I would see healing, perhaps. The blind made to see. The lame to walk. These were the miracles the Missionaria Galaxia preached. What I saw was unification. A man, his body twisted by the original radiation, stumbled into the edge of the light. His skin, cracked and weeping, began to smooth. Not to heal, but to homogenize. His individual features began to dissolve. His nose flattened, his eyes, different colors, one blue, one brown, slowly bled into a single, uniform shade of gray. He fell to his knees, not in pain, but in ecstasy, his voice joining the drone, now perfectly in tune. He was becoming part of the chorus. Losing himself. Becoming the same. I raised my data slate, my hands trembling. I recorded his testimony. Or what was left of it. I am free, he whispered, his voice losing its unique timbre, becoming a neutral tone. The pain was individuality. The doubt was a flaw. Now, we are one. The coppery taste of fear was in my mouth. This was not a miracle. This was erasure. I looked at my data slate, at the official designations for this event. It was logged as the Great Harmonization. I documented it. I was thorough. I was precise. But I was not faithful. Not to their truth. In the privacy of my rented room, a small chamber that smelled of rust and that pervasive incense, I opened a secret file. I began to write my own account. The true account. I titled it, simply, The Gilded Cage. This was my ritual. My secret rebellion. By day, I would record the sanctioned miracles. By night, I would pour the horror onto my private slate. The sight of the dissolving faces. The sound of the homogenized drone. The smell of the liquid light, like ozone and warmed plastic. The touch of the air within the plaza, static, clinging, like cobwebs on the skin. And the taste in my mouth was always of metal and ash. I thought I was hiding my descent. I was a fool. When I returned to the Photep, Magister Kalen was waiting for me in my scriptorium. He held my official report on his data slate. He did not mention my private files. He never would. A satisfactory record, Scribe Valerius, he hummed, his helmeted gaze seeming to pierce right through my skull. You captured the essence of the event, the beauty of unity, the peace of relinquishment. He stepped closer. I could smell the ancient dust that clung to his robes. It disturbs you at first. The flesh is weak. It clings to its own fragile identity. But that is the root of all sin, is it not? The I, the me, the mine. The Emperor, in his infinite wisdom, sought to guide us from this sin. But Horus has shown us the way to cut it out. A more direct path. He placed a hand on my shoulder. It was not a comforting gesture. It felt like the weight of a tombstone. Your next assignment, he said, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. A great honor. You are to document the Echo of Davin. My blood ran cold. The Echo of Davin was not a planet, not a place. It was the most sacred relic in this benighted empire. It was the psychic scar, the moment of the Emperor's containment, made manifest. It was said to be kept in the inner sanctum of the vengeful spirit, Horus's flagship, which now served as the mobile capital of the reconciled Imperium. I am not worthy, Magister, I stammered. On the contrary, he replied, his finger tracing the edge of my data slate. Your sensitivity to these events is precisely what is required. You perceive the nuances, the textures. You will bear witness to the heart of our salvation. Prepare yourself, Valerius. We depart within the cycle. He left me there, trembling. This was not a reward. It was a test. A final, terrible examination of my faith. And I knew, with a certainty that coiled in my gut like a cold serpent, that I was going to fail. The journey to the vengeful spirit was a descent into a different order of madness. The ship they assigned me was a sleek, black dagger of a vessel, a frigate of the Justaran Terminator elite. There were no pilgrims here. No chanting masses. Only silence. A deep, profound silence that was more unnerving than any noise. The warriors of the Sons of Horus, now called the Luperci Sanctus, moved through the corridors like ghosts. Their armor, once sea green, was now a dark, polished obsidian, inlaid with gold filigree that depicted scenes of mercy and redemption. But the mercy in these carvings was a violent thing, a sword staying its blow, a hand closing gently around a throat. Their faces, when I saw them, were grim, set in expressions of perpetual, sorrowful duty. They looked at me, a mere scribe, with a pity that felt like a physical blow. The captain of the frigate was a giant named Phocas Kyber. I recognized him from the histories, the one they called Widowmaker. His face was a roadmap of scars, but his eyes were the worst part. They were calm, serene. There was no fury in them, no ambition. Only a deep, abiding, and utterly terrifying conviction. He greeted me in the Strategium, a room that was more chapel than command center. Scribe, he said, his voice a low rumble, like distant artillery. You come to witness the wound that healed the galaxy. I do, Lord Kyber, I said, my own voice thin and reedy. It is not a sight for the faint of heart, he continued, his gaze fixed on the viewing port, on the swirling colors of the warp. Many who see it break. Their minds cannot reconcile the beauty with the pain. They forget that the two are now, and have always been, the same thing. The Emperor, in his solitude, understands this. He weeps not for his captivity, but for our previous ignorance. The way he said, the Emperor, it was not with reverence. It was with a tone one might use for a revered, but dangerously insane, ancestor. What is it exactly? I dared to ask. Kyber turned those calm, dead eyes on me. It is a moment. A single, perfect moment, stretched into eternity. The moment the War Master's love for his father overcame the poison of the dark gods. The moment he chose to save him from himself. To contain the terrible, beautiful, and destructive power of the imperial truth. It is a moment of infinite sacrifice, frozen in time and space. You will see. We emerged from the warp in a system that had no name. Only a designation, Sanctusi. And there, hanging in the void, was the vengeful spirit. It was encased in a web of golden light, a cage of energy that pulsed with a slow, rhythmic beat. A heartbeat. The same heartbeat I sometimes heard in my dreams. Around it floated a flotilla of black ships, the Luperci Sanctus, silent sentinels. As our frigate docked, the silence became absolute. The air grew thick, harder to breathe. The incense here was different, sharper, with an undertone of something burnt, like seared flesh and melted wiring. I was met by a figure I had only ever seen in my most fevered nightmares. He was tall, clad in the crimson of the word-bearers, his face a mask of devout fervor. I knew him instantly. Erebus. "Welcome, child of memory," he said, and his smile was a predator's promise. "You are here to add another verse to the one true scripture. The scripture written not in ink, but in reality itself." He led me through the halls of the vengeful spirit. It was a place of impossible contradictions. The corridors were vast, cathedral-like, filled with kneeling figures, space marines from a dozen legions, all in their new, black and gold livery, their heads bowed in prayer. But between the pillars, in the shadows just beyond the golden light of countless candles, things moved. Shapes of flickering darkness, things with too many limbs and eyes that were pools of absolute black. They did not attack. They observed. They were part of the liturgy. "Do not fear the Neverborn," Erebus said, his voice smooth as oil. They, too, were redeemed by the War Master's act. They are the chorus of the abyss, singing counterpoint to the hymns of light. Chaos and order, bound in a perfect, stable embrace. This is the peace that the false emperor, forgive me, the captive emperor, could never achieve. He sought to starve the gods. Horus showed us how to domesticate them. My mind recoiled. Domesticate the gods of the warp? It was a madness so profound it circled back to a kind of terrifying sense. We entered the inner sanctum. The air was so thick with psychic pressure I felt my teeth ache. The chamber was spherical, and at its center, hanging in the air, was the echo of Davin. It was a wound. A tear in reality, about 10 meters across. But it was not a raw, bleeding thing. It had been curated. Golden filigree, like the roots of a vast, metallic tree, encrusted its edges, holding it open. Light pulsed from within, but it was a sickly, greenish gold, and within that light, I could see fragments. A flash of the Emperor's face, not in pain, but in a state of profound, cosmic shock. A glimpse of Horus, not the benevolent shepherd of the statues, but a being of incandescent power, his eyes burning with a mixture of triumph and agony. The sound of a scream, stretched across 10,000 years, so long it had become a constant, background note, the fundamental frequency of this new reality. The smell of a god's blood and a primarch's burning soul. It was beautiful. It was the most horrifying thing I had ever witnessed. I felt my mind starting to unravel, to be pulled into that eternal, tortured moment. "Behold," Erebus whispered, his voice full of lustful reverence, "the engine of our grace. From this wound flows all the miracles you have documented. The harmonization on Kolth Secondary? A mere echo of this great unification. The power that holds the Emperor also sustains the Imperium. His perpetual sacrifice is the fuel for our golden age." I fell to my knees, not in worship, but in nausea. I vomited onto the polished floor. The taste was acidic, bitter. Erebus did not chastise me. He simply smiled. "The body rejects the sublime. It is to be expected. Record what you see, scribe. Let your art do what your flesh cannot." He left me there, at the edge of the abyss. I don't know how long I stayed. Hours. Days. Time had no meaning in that place. I fumbled for my data slate, both the official and my secret one. I began to record, my words a jumbled, frantic mess. Sight, a cancer of light. A captured scream. Sound, the silent noise of a universe being rewritten. Smell, victory and funeral pyres. Touch, the air is solid grief. Taste, my own dissolution. I was so absorbed, so shattered, that I didn't notice the other presence at first. A figure, clad in the simple robes of a documentarian, like myself. An older man, his face haggard, his eyes holding a familiar, hunted look. He knelt beside me. "It calls to you, too, doesn't it?" he whispered, his voice cracked with disuse. I jerked back, startled. "Do not be afraid," he said. "My name is Alaric." I was the first. The first remembrancer assigned to this duty. The first? I asked. I came here 50 years ago, he said, his eyes fixed on the wound. I have been trying to capture its likeness ever since. I have failed. All we can do is trace the edges of the lie. He looked at me, and in his gaze, I saw a spark of the same secret fire that burned in me. You keep 2 records, don't you? The one for them, and the one for whatever is left of you. I nodded, unable to speak. They know, he said, his voice dropping even lower. They always know. They let us do it. They think it's part of the process. Our descent is a spice in their grand recipe. A final, stubborn flicker of the eye before it is extinguished. They will come for you, soon. They will offer you a choice. What choice? I breathed. To be harmonized. To join the chorus. To have your individual mind dissolved into the great, peaceful whole of the reconciled will. Or, he trailed off, his eyes filled with a terrible pity. To become fuel. Fuel. The engine requires sustenance. The Emperor's power is vast, but even he is not infinite. The chorus of the atoned on the ships, the psychers whose souls are burned to keep the lights on, they are just the beginning. To maintain this stasis, this perfect, terrible balance, requires a constant input of souls. Those who refuse harmony are not killed. That would be a waste. They are fed to the echo. Their life, their pain, their individual spark, it is what keeps the moment alive. I felt a cold so profound it felt like my bones were turning to ice. There is no rebellion? No resistance? Alaric let out a dry, rattling laugh. Oh, there is. The salamanders and the iron hands, they never reconciled. They fight on, in the ghoul stars and the dead zones. They are the last flicker of the old, flawed truth. But they are losing. How can you fight against paradise? How can you wage war on a nightmare that everyone else calls a dream? He gripped my arm, his fingers like talons. They will offer you the choice after you present your findings to him. Alaric didn't need to answer. The dread in his eyes was confirmation enough. I was to have an audience with the War Master. With Horus Lupercal himself. The next few days were a blur of terrified preparation. I crafted my official report, layering it with such thick, sycophantic prose that I gagged as I wrote it. I spoke of the echo's sublime beauty, its holy purpose, the peace I had found in its presence. It was a masterpiece of lies. My private record, I filled with a frantic, final energy. I documented everything Alaric had told me. I described the feeling of my own mind being slowly sanded down by the proximity to the echo. I wrote of the things in the shadows, the domesticated demons. I ended the file with a single, desperate sentence. The victory was worse than the heresy. The day of the audience arrived. I was led by Phocas Kyber and Erebus through the grandest hall of the vengeful spirit. It was filled with the highest lords of this new empire. I saw Mordorion, a silent, looming specter, his scythe held not as a weapon, but as a symbol of harvest. I saw Fulgrim, his form impossibly beautiful, yet his eyes held a bored, jaded emptiness, as if he had experienced every sensation the universe had to offer and found them all wanting. Magnus the Red was there, his single eye burning with a knowledge that seemed to cause him perpetual, silent agony. And at the far end, on a throne of black marble and gold, sat Horus. He was magnificent and terrible. He was larger than life, clad in artificer armor so dark it seemed to drink the light. His face was that of a grieving king, lined with the weight of infinite responsibility. There was no trace of the arrogant war master of the histories. No hint of the chaotic fiend. This was something else. Something far more dangerous. A savior who had damned the galaxy to save it. His eyes met mine as I approached. And in that gaze, I saw everything. I saw the infinite layers of the lie. I saw the cost. I saw the trapped, screaming power of the Emperor at the heart of the echo. And I saw that Horus knew. He knew it was a damnation. He wore his sorrow not as a mask, but as a crown. He had made his choice, and he would make us all live in it, forever. I knelt. I presented my data slate with the official report. Rise, Scribe Valerius. Horus's voice was a soft, resonant baritone, a voice that could command galaxies and break hearts with a single word. Your work is known to me. Your sensitivity to the nuances of our new piece is remarkable. He took the slate, but did not look at it. His eyes remained on me. You have seen the heart of our salvation. You have documented its echoes across the stars. And now, you have a choice to make. You can join the great work. Your mind, your unique perception, it would be a valuable addition to the chorus of the reconciled. You would know a peace beyond individual comprehension. The peace of unity. He paused, and the silence in the hall was absolute. Or, he continued, and his voice held a note of genuine, sorrowful regret. You may cling to the fragile, painful thing you call yourself. That, too, has value. The engine must be fed. The balance must be maintained. It was not a threat. It was a statement of fact. A divine equation. I looked at the faces of the Primarchs. At Erebus's smug piety. At Focus Kyber's grim certainty. And finally, back at Horus. At the beautiful, tragic architect of this golden hell. And I knew I could not choose. To become part of the drone, to lose myself in that blissful nothing? Or to be devoured, my soul stretched into a single, endless moment of agony to power the cage that held a god? My mouth was dry. My heart was a frantic bird beating against its cage. I opened my mouth to speak, but no sound came out. They gave me time. A Terran standard week. I was returned to the Photep, to my old scriptorium. But it was no longer my sanctuary. It was a cell. The golden light from the lectern was now a jaundiced, sickly glow. The icon of the weeping emperor seemed to mock me with its performed sorrow. My days became a different kind of cycle. A spiral of doubt and fear. I would pace the hexagonal room, the memories of what I had seen flashing behind my eyes. The dissolving faces on Kolth Secondary. Peace, a part of me whispered. No more pain, no more doubt. Just the song. The chorus of the atoned on the pilgrim ship. Their sacrifice gives purpose to millions, the whisper insisted. Is that not a form of grace? The echo of Davin, that beautiful, terrible wound. It is stability, the voice in my head reasoned, a voice that sounded suspiciously like Magister Kalen. The long night will never return. The dark gods are placated, their energy harnessed. The Emperor is safe from his own destructive ambition. Is this not a better way? A more practical truth? The temptation to surrender was immense. It would be so easy. To walk into the nearest basilica of harmonization, to step into that liquid, golden light, and feel my fears, my regrets, my lonely, fractured self just melt away. To become a single, serene note in the grand symphony. To no longer be me. I was so tired. The weight of my secret knowledge was crushing me. The taste of truth was ash in my mouth, and I was starving for the sweet, cloying taste of the lie. I spent hours staring at my 2 data slates. The official one, with its gilded reports, and the private one, with its screaming, desperate truth. Which was the real me? The compliant scribe? Or the horrified witness? I thought of Alaric, his 50-year vigil at the edge of the abyss. Had he chosen? Or was he still there, tracing the edges, a permanent state of suspended animation, unable to commit to either heaven or hell? I remembered a story from the old texts, before the reconciled will had censored them, of the legend of Sisyphus, condemned to roll a boulder up a hill for eternity, only for it to roll back down each time. I used to think that was the definition of hell. Pointless, repetitive labor. Now I understand. Hell is not the rolling of the stone. Hell is being given a choice between rolling the stone or becoming the stone itself. And knowing that either way, you are trapped on the hill. Magister Kalen visited me on the 5th day. He did not speak of my choice. He simply brought me a new assignment. A data crystal, cool and impersonal. The world of IAX, he said, his melodic voice unchanged. The home of the Healers Guild. A most fascinating miracle is occurring. The rivers there now run with a liquid light. Those who drink from them are cured of all physical ailments. But they report a shared consciousness. A single, planetary dream. Document it, Valerius. It will help clarify your thoughts. He was offering me a way out. One last chance to see the beauty before I made my decision. To see the paradise, one more time, and forget the cost. I took the crystal. After he left, I slotted it into my viewer. The images were of IAX, a world once known for its healing arts. Now, it was a world of stunning, uniform beauty. The cities were pristine. The people were healthy, their faces placid, their movements synchronized. They worked in perfect harmony, building nothing. They simply maintained. They tended gardens that grew in perfect, geometric patterns. They sang a single, planetary hymn that was broadcast from orbital relays. And then I saw it. A child, no more than 6, stumbled and scraped her knee. It was a tiny thing. A bead of blood welled up. For a moment, her face crumpled in that universal expression of childish pain. She was about to cry. But before the tear could fall, a dozen adults surrounding her turned. Their placid faces did not change, but they moved as one. They gently guided her to the edge of one of the glowing rivers. They coaxed her to drink. She did. The scrap on her knee sealed instantly. The pain vanished from her face. And the unique, individual spark of confusion and hurt in her eyes, it vanished too. It was replaced by the same serene, placid emptiness. She smiled a perfect, empty smile and rejoined the pattern. They had healed her body by killing her pain. By killing her ability to feel pain. They had erased a moment of individual experience to preserve the harmony of the whole. That was the moment my temptation died. It curdled in my stomach, replaced by a cold, hard resolve. This was not peace. This was the end of everything that made us human. The stumbles, the scars, the tears, they were the price of being an individual. To remove them was to remove the soul. I looked at the icon of the weeping emperor. For the first time, I thought I understood. He wasn't weeping for his children. He was weeping because he knew. He knew that the greatest threat to humanity was not extinction, but this. This perfect, gilded, soulless eternity. The imperial truth he had preached was a lie, but it was a lie that demanded we strive, that we question, that we feel. This new truth demanded only that we cease. I picked up my private data slate. I opened a new file. I did not write a report. I wrote a confession. A testament. I poured every sensory detail, every fractured memory, every horrifying insight onto its surface. I wrote of the smell of the incense and the seared flesh underneath. I wrote of the taste of the liquid light and the sound of the homogenized drone. I wrote of the sight of the echo of Davin, the engine of our damnation. I wrote it all. And I ended it not with a desperate plea, but with a statement of fact. The victory was worse than the heresy. We were not saved. We were curated. And the exhibit is forever. I knew what I had to do. I could not join the chorus. I would not become fuel for the engine. There was a third choice. The one Alaric had hinted at. The one the salamanders and iron hands had chosen. Rebellion. It would be a futile, hopeless rebellion. A single scribe against a galaxy-spanning empire of serene, sorrowful tyrants. I would be caught. I would be destroyed. But I would do it as me. Scribe Valerius. The one who saw. The one who remembered. I would roll the stone, one last time, for no other reason than because it was my stone to roll. I would send my testament out. Into the wild, uncharted data streams. A message in a bottle, thrown into a sea of static. Hoping that someone, somewhere, in the ghoul stars or the dead zones, would find it. And know that not everyone had bowed. Not everyone had forgotten. It was a tiny, insignificant act. A spark in an ocean of night. But it was mine. The transmission suite on the Photep was heavily guarded, not by soldiers, but by silent, hooded adepts of the Mechanicum who had sworn allegiance to the reconciled will. Their optics glowed with a soft, gold light, and their mechadendrites twitched in a constant, rhythmic pattern, as if listening to a shared song. I did not have the codes to access the main astropathic choir. That was a one-way channel to Terra, to the hollowed-out palace where the corpse emperor's physical form was kept enshrined, a tourist attraction for the faithful. A place to go and weep for the god who failed. No, I needed something cruder. More ancient. A deep space voxcaster, the kind used for emergency broadcasts and ship-to-ship hails in dead zones. Its signal would be weak. It would likely be detected and scrambled within seconds. But those seconds were all I needed. I had calculated my path. During the shift change, when the devotions in the main chapel reached their crescendo, The guard on the lower auxiliary decks was light. I moved through the service corridors, the air thick with the smell of ozone and hot metal. The rhythmic thrum of the ship's engines was a heartbeat I was now trying to escape. My own heart was a frantic drum against my ribs. Every shadow seemed to hold a watching, golden eye. Every whisper of the ventilation system sounded like Magister Kalen's melodic hum. I reached the sealed door of the auxiliary Vox chamber. My access code, as a senior scribe, was supposed to grant me entry for historical research, listening to old battle recordings, that sort of thing. I prayed it would still work. I pressed my palm to the reader. The light flickered from red to amber, and for a terrifying moment, I thought it would deny me. Then, with a hiss of equalizing pressure, the door slid open. The room was small, cramped, filled with humming banks of outdated equipment. A single, large view screen showed the star-dusted blackness outside. I went to the main console, my fingers flying across the keys, initiating the boot-up sequence for the long-range caster. The system whirred to life, dials glowing with a faint, green light. It was an analog system in a digital world. That was my hope. It might slip through the more sophisticated monitoring systems for a precious moment. I pulled the data crystal from my robe, the one containing my testament, my confession, the truth of the gilded cage. I slotted it into the reader. Broadcast source required, a mechanized voice intoned. I inputted the oldest, most general address I knew. The all-frequency emergency beacon code. The one that would scream into the void for anyone listening. Broadcast message required. I typed a single, stark line, the header for my transmission. This is a record of the fall. The victory was a lie. Powering emitter. Stand by. A progress bar began to crawl across the screen. 1, 2. It was agonizingly slow. The hum of the caster grew louder, a high-pitched whine that set my teeth on edge. I could feel it. A pressure building in the air. The subtle, psychic shift that meant I had been noticed. The serene order of the photep had been disturbed. A single, dissonant note had been struck. The door to the Vox chamber exploded inwards. It did not shatter. It did not buckle. It simply dissolved. It turned into a cloud of golden dust that swirled and settled on the floor. And standing in the doorway was Magister Kalen. He was not wearing his helmet. His face was revealed for the first time. It was beautiful, ageless. His features were perfectly symmetrical, his skin smooth as alabaster. But his eyes were not his own. They were pools of molten gold, with no pupil, no iris. Just a swirling, liquid, metallic light. "Valerius," he said, and his voice was no longer a melodic hum. It was the sound of a billion voices speaking in perfect, sorrowful unison. The voice of the chorus. "We offered you peace. We offered you unity. We offered you a place in the great and terrible beauty of our design." I stood my ground, my hand hovering over the console. The progress bar read 47. "It is not beauty," I said, my voice trembling but clear. "It is taxidermy on a galactic scale." He took a step into the room. The air grew colder. The smell of incense was now overpowering, mixed with the sharp, electric tang of raw psychic power. "You cling to your pain as if it defines you." The chorus spoke through him. "It does not define you, Valerius. It limits you. It is a cage you refuse to leave. We are offering you the key. You are offering to melt down the cage, and me along with it." I shouted, backing away. The progress bar hit 58. "Is that so terrible?" he asked, and for a moment, a flicker of the individual, the man who was once Magister Kalen, showed in that golden gaze. A hint of genuine curiosity. To be part of something greater? To never be alone again? To never feel fear or doubt, or this crushing, pathetic loneliness. He was in my mind. He was pulling at the threads of my resolve, showing me the emptiness I was fighting for. The loneliness of the truth-teller in a world of happy lies. "I would rather be lonely and real," I gasped, "than be a happy phantom in your gilded dream." The sorrow on his face deepened. A noble sentiment. A flawed one. But it has its uses. He raised a hand. The data slate on the console began to glow, the crystal within it shimmering with heat. 72. "The engine must be fed, Valerius. Your individual spark, your defiant eye, it will burn so brightly. It will power the peace of 1,000 worlds for a single second. Is that not a form of immortality? A form of meaning? I felt a pulling sensation, not on my body, but on my soul. A terrible, gentle suction, trying to draw the essence of me out through my eyes, my mouth. I saw a vision of the echo of Davin, opening before me like a flower, ready to receive me. I heard the stretched scream, and I knew that soon, my voice would be added to it, a new, eternal note of agony in the heart of the machine. No, the word did not come from me. It came from a place deeper than thought, deeper than fear. It was the last, defiant spasm of the self. I threw myself at the console, not to stop the broadcast, but to accelerate it. I slammed my fist down on the override command, diverting all power, every joule the FOTEP's auxiliary systems could provide, directly into the Voxcaster. The whine became a shriek. The console sparked, dials bursting. The view screen flickered, showing the starfield outside distorting, warping around the immense psychic pressure being generated in the room. 85, 90. Magister Kalen, the chorus, took another step. The golden light from his eyes enveloped me. It was not hot. It was cold. A cold that burned. I could feel my memories starting to unravel. The face of my mother, the taste of real water, the sound of my own laughter, they were being gently, meticulously plucked from the tapestry of my mind and cast into the void. 95. It is done, Valerius, the chorus whispered, its voice now the only thing in my universe. Your rebellion is a footnote. A flicker. It changes nothing. 96. I looked past him, through the dissolving doorway. I saw the corridors of the FOTEP, and I saw the warriors of the Luperci Sanctus standing there, not moving to intervene, just watching, with those same, calm, pitying eyes. Focus Kyber was among them. He gave a slow, almost imperceptible shake of his head, a final gesture of regret for my stubbornness. 97. The pulling sensation became unbearable. I was a thread being drawn through the eye of a needle made of light. I could feel the edges of my consciousness fraying. 98. I had one last, coherent thought. It was not of my mother, or my home, or any grand, philosophical truth. It was of the child on IAX, the one who scraped her knee. I thought of that single, precious tear that never fell. The tear that was her own. The pain that was hers to feel. I would be fuel for the engine. But I would not be harmonized. I would go into the fire as myself. Scribe Valerius. The one who saw. The one who remembered. 99. I looked into the golden eyes of the thing that had been Magister Kalen. And I smiled. A raw, painful, human smile. You can have my soul, I whispered, my voice barely a breath. But you can't have my story. My hand slammed down on the final execute command. 100. Broadcast. A silent, digital scream erupted from the FOTEP. A packet of truth, a confession of madness, a record of the fall, shooting into the immutable blackness of space. It would be caught, of course. Scrambled. Dissected. Most of it would be deleted. But maybe, just maybe, a fragment would get through. A single, corrupted data byte. A ghost of a whisper. A word. Fall. Or lie. Or Davin. It would be enough. The golden light consumed me. The last thing I felt was not pain, but a vast, impersonal, and infinite sorrow. The last thing I heard was the chorus, welcoming me home. The last thing I saw was the face of the weeping emperor, and in that final, shattered moment, I thought I saw his lips move. I thought I heard a single, silent word, meant for me alone. Remember, they were right, of course. My rebellion changed nothing. The Imperium of the reconciled will endures. The harmonization spreads. The echo of Davin pulses on, its golden cage unbroken. Horus Lupercal rules from his throne of sorrow, and the galaxy enjoys a peace bought with a single, eternal scream. I am part of that scream now. My individual spark, as Magister Kalen called it, was indeed a potent fuel. I burn in the heart of the machine. My pain, my defiance, my memories, they are stretched across a single, endless moment, a new thread in the tapestry of torment that powers the gilded streets and the silent, smiling faces. I am the taste of ash in the sacramental wine. I am the flicker of a shadow in the corner of your eye when you kneel to pray. I am the cold spot in the air of the basilica, the one that makes you shiver for no reason. I am the dissonant hum under the chorus, the one you can almost hear if you listen too closely in the deep of the night. They thought they had consumed me. They were wrong. They have only given me a louder voice. So listen. Listen to the silence between the hymns. That is where I am. Smell the air beneath the incense. That is where you will find the truth. Look at the face of the weeping emperor and know that his tears are not for his fate, but for yours. You live in the victory that was worse than the heresy. You dwell in the beautiful, terrible, and perfect lie. And I am the truth, burning at the center of it.